Brandon and I, when we were playing this, we reached out to the creators also because we were looking at this and we're like, this is the birth of a new genre, and it's the type of game I think that needs to be decoupled from this kind of Warcrafty map editor. And we think it proves part of the thesis that we were having around what the future of gaming is going to look like in terms of super high quality multiplayer games, direct to consumer as a service. And where
which at the time, to be clear, just for people's memory, like wasn't really a thing.
Really wasn't
Fortnite,
a thing.
the world of Fortnite, like all of this was not there.
Right. Yeah. And and so when we go, so originally we just wanted to build a game developer or be a game developer to go build games that would be like this. But then we talked to all the publishers, EA, Activision, et cetera, and they looked at us like we were crazy. They were like, what do you mean you're not going to have single player? 80% of all players only play single player, right? There's no, like, you're not going to have a box. All the, like 90+% of the revenue comes from retail, blah, blah, like all these things. So they were like, you guys are idiots. And so then we're like, wow, okay, if, we can't give these guys the keys of the kingdom. So we have to go raise venture money, which meant that we also had to go build a publishing business and figure out how to do that, which increased our scope quite a bit. We thought it was originally going to take only $3 million to build League of Legends and get it to market. Ended up taking us 20. And we proceeded to make
hold on.
every mistake you could possibly think about.
Even just there, like taking $3 million to build League of Legends, like how did you actually, did you hire the Dota guys? Like how did you actually go about saying, we don't know how to design, build, code, do anything with a video game. We just have a great idea here, and obviously a lot else.
Right. That many people thought was a bad idea.
Sure.
That but were like experts in
this.
But
I think you could at least have conviction in your own confidence and sort of that you were living it and playing it. But how did you go from there to saying like, we're actually going to bring this thing to life?
Right. I think that what you just said there is actually a really important point for any entrepreneur also, is the data that we had that, people at publishers or, any sort of, Wall Street analyst, whatever, doesn't have was what it felt like as a player, right? And why it was cool.
You guys back to back in your living room or whatever.
Right, and we were willing to weight that highly in our decision making. Yeah. And what we're trying to always do at Riot is help people learn how important that is.
Which is so rare in big companies in general.
And it's just really hard, right? Because there's lots of reasons, like a lot of people don't even understand what that is. Yeah. And so there's not bad people, they're just like, I don't get that, right? And so, anyway, so that's a big challenge. But so to your point, Brandon and I essentially did kind of nine months of the nights and weekends thing where we were trying to talk ourselves out of it. We were putting together a business plan, being like, all right, if we were able to attract capital, one, could we? Two, how would we actually execute this? Like, could we hire a team? Could we get the right expertise? And then three, if we built this thing, would it work? Would people
You're just trying to poke holes in it to make sure you guys weren't missing anything?
Exactly. And because, it's like the opportunity cost is high, even though we're still young, right? Like, jumping off of our respective career tracks to go do something else, especially when, it oftentimes felt like, because we loved games. So it felt like this kind of unrealistic dream also, and we're not engineers, not designers, not artists, et cetera. So it's kind of this weird situation, but we ended up putting together a business plan, had 15 slides, and we had about a 200-slide appendix. And because part of the reason was we knew that we had this massive credibility hurdle to overcome with investors, where they're going to look at us and be like, well, who are you guys? How do you know how to build this game, right? And we'd be like, well, thank God we have this person, And so the original approach was we hired somebody who was going to be an executive producer and the CTO who had a great resume, lots of experience in games. To make a long story short, though, we had to fire that person, or we parted ways with that person after about 3 months because we found out over time that they actually had no interest or intention of actually building the thing we went to go raise money for, which was an interesting experience. Again, to talk about like one of the worst possible starts you could ever have to a company, being like, hey, board, that guy who knows everything about building games? Yeah, we got to get rid of him. Yeah, but what was
and we can't build games ourselves.
Right, but what's super important about that is that, again, necessity being the mother of all invention. Yep. Brandon and I were like hiring all these young interns that understood sort of the content vision, but had very little experience. And this other individual was hiring some developers that had a lot of, or some professional experience, but typically weren't, especially over time we've learned, weren't top tier developers. And we had no idea what good looked like, right? And so we were constantly trying to go educate ourselves on that, constantly trying to network, trying to meet people and trying to hire people as we tried to figure out what good looked like. But that was the catalyst which taught us that if we don't go roll up our sleeves and learn everything about everything and get 100% involved in how this is all working, it'll totally fail. And so I think that was a key catalyst that, again, if we didn't have that early mistake, probably would have torpedoed the company down the road.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
no, you go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, did you have imposter syndrome around this, or were you just so blind to what you didn't know that you were just like I guess maybe if it were you going back now and you had to go do this, would you almost psych yourself out of it based on everything you know now?
Brandon and I joke that knowing what we know now, we wouldn't have invested in ourselves back then because it's so utterly improbable. And so, I do think it's weird that Riot worked at all.
Well, it worked for a reason, a multitude of reasons, obviously, clearly.